When you're fishing for F1s, skimmers and small carp on our commercial type lakes, backshotting is almost a necessity. And it's all about line management. It's about keeping that line straight above the float and keeping the pole tip directly over the float. You'll hook a lot more bites. The whole point of placing backshots above the float is to keep the float and hook bait still. When you're fishing on these type of venues, any movement of the float that moves the bait below is detrimental and will stop you getting bites. Every time I fish on a commercial, if you've got any amount of wind when you set up, I always start with a simple backshotted rig. And this is normally 30 centimetres of line from the float to the pole tip. And in between that 30 centimetres of line, I have two backshots, usually number 9s. And I'll place one 10 centimetres above the float and the other one 10 centimetres above that. What you're trying to do, you've got the pole above the float and you're trying to keep them shots directly above the float. Any wind that intercepts that float and that line, the shots keep everything straight, so your float doesn't actually move around. So you can keep above the float, and any little dips you can pick up on. You're not striking, you're just lifting, especially when you're fishing with pellets. Just to lift, you're so direct to that bait that you lift the fish almost on. So you miss very few bites. Of course, if the wind is stronger, I mean today at times the wind's got up really strong. And then all I've done, I've simply changed to another rig that I've got a slightly longer line on. I've extended that line to 50 centimetres. So I've got now 50 centimetres of line above the float. But what I've done, I've backshotted in a slightly different way. 4 inches above the actual float, I've got a block of number 9s. Now normally I use 3 number 9s and block them together 4 inches above the float. And what you're trying to do then, you're trying to hold those backshots literally on the surface of the water at the side of the float. But of course, above it then, you've got to hold on to them backshots all the time. Now what happens when you get wind, your pole can move around. It can actually move about above. But them backshots keep the line straight and you're just 4 inches away from the float. So every time you'll get a bite, you can just pick up and lift into those bites easily. These fish on commercials have been caught many times and they're very educated. Probably more educated than me, to be honest. But it's difficult to catch them. A lot of the bites are tiny little indications. You get little lifts of the float or little dips. So it's important to keep the line tight above the float. Today we've fished very simple. I've fished with a small pot, tapping in micro pellets and fishing just a soft pellet on the hook. When it's windy like it is today, you need to choose the right pole float. You want a float with quite a bulbous body and also a wire stem. The one that I fished with today is an AS1. And what this does, it keeps the float still in the water. The wire stem creates a sort of keel underneath the float that stops the float moving around. So fishing with backshots on commercials is such an important part of catching fish. Once you keep that line tight above the float, you'll put more fish in the net.